So you can start whenever you're
Okay.
ready.
Okay. Well, thank you. The biggest thank you is to Skylar right this minute. I have lots and lots of hakarat hatov, which is gratitude to, let's see, I just got a text, Skylar, from Emily Blank that she doesn't have the link.
Okay, I will see if I can resend it. And you could go ahead and get started. I'll see if I can resend it to, yeah.
Okay, I'm pretty sure it's Emily Blank.
Okay.
So huge thank you to Skylar, who's already helping me out here. It is a lot of fun to teach, and it is not as much fun to teach on Zoom for someone like me who is not very technologically adept. I can do a few little things, but not much. So Skylar is really kind to help out. She's volunteering for Lehrhaus, and I just appreciate her help so much. So I want to wish Bruchim Habaim, a really warm welcome to all you Mention wannabes. I'm so glad that all of you want to be Mention, the plural of Mensch. And of course, since I know many of you, I know you're already Mention, you're already good, kind, compassionate, people of integrity. So I'm kind of curious, what made you want to take this class? What drew you to this class? And if you have the gumption to do it, if you could put in the chat why you want to learn about Mussar or learn more about Mussar, I would appreciate it. And your fellow classmates will appreciate it as well, because they'll get to see all the many ways that Mussar can add value to our lives and to our learning. So add that to the chat while I continue to talk, and just a warm welcome to everyone. I want to start just by saying what drew me to Mussar. I've been studying and teaching since 2013. During the year of 2013, I was blessed to have a sabbatical from Temple Isaiah, and where I had been serving for many years, and ended up serving there for 26 years and retired in 2018. But in 2013, I was on sabbatical, and I happened to open a journal that I kept around the high holidays that I would start in the early spring. And I would begin to write down ideas I had for sermons. And I would also always keep a list of things I wanted to repent for, and a list of aspirations that I had, things I wanted to change, ways I wanted to be different in the new year. During a sabbatical, I had time to look at those lists more carefully and more thoughtfully, and turn back to many years before and look through the years one by one. And I realized with a start, and I have to admit some disappointment, that most of the things I wanted to do and change and be better and different about were the same year after year. I kept trying. I kept wanting to change in the same ways, and the same kinds of qualities that I saw in myself that needed some work still needed work. Now, maybe I took a step forward, then I would take a few steps back. And I thought, I really need a new discipline. I need a new way to work on these hopes and dreams and aspirations that I have for myself and the way I am in the world. I knew a little bit about Mussar, and I began to study it more regularly. And most importantly, I began to practice Mussar. And what we're going to learn over the next 3 weeks, which is an introduction to Mussar, an encouragement to you to take it on as something in your life, as a practice, as something regular that you do and think about and pursue, hopefully with someone else or in a group. What we're going to see is that Mussar is a discipline and an exercise, like any exercise, it gets better as you practice it more. Why Mussar in particular? There can be many different kinds of disciplines that you pursue. Some people find they make incremental progress in their own idealistic aspirations and moving forward in those through meditation, through mindfulness meditation, some through Torah study, some in other kinds of groups. I find that the combination of Jewish study and meditation and journaling and chanting and talking out loud to myself or to God, however we understand it, as a combination suits my way of understanding the world and the opportunity to be a better person in it. Who's a mensch? What's a mensch? A mensch is someone, I believe, who makes their little corner of the world better because we're in it for a short period of time. We're not here very long, but we have an opportunity to do a lot of good during the time that we are here if we work at it. Can we be better, more ethical, less angry, more kind, less gossipy, more humble, less impatient? I believe we can. And we'll make a start in these next few weeks practicing what it feels like to do that. As you can tell already, Mussar learning focuses on character traits. We all have character traits. Some we would like to have more of, let's say generosity. Could we be more generous? Some we would like to have less of. Maybe we could be less impatient. We could be less judgmental of ourselves and other people. For instance, I have a great deal of admiration and gratitude to Racheli and David Beal, my friends and colleagues, who, when they read in the paper that the old Lehrhaus, which had changed its name to Hamakom, when it died precipitously and before its time, they jumped in and started calling people and revived it. That kind of
amazing.
It is amazing. Thank you. I agree. They have what in Mussar lingo we call zirizut. They had alacrity. They didn't wait around. They just jumped right in. They said, we have the energy, we have the enthusiasm. We're going to find other people with similar enthusiasm. And we're going to make this happen. And within weeks, we had a board, we had officers, we had teachers. That's the kind of midah, that kind of character trait, soul trait that we can work on having. Where I might want to lie around on the couch a little longer before I jump up and do something like that, the Beals were ready and eager to do it. And I also want to thank Skylar Cohen, who is our host and co-host, again, who has the talent, and I offer her the kavod, the honor of her talents and her generosity of spirit in coming on tonight to make sure everything went okay. And I'm curious if Emily got the link. Were you able to send it to her?
I was able to get her email and send it. I haven't seen her join, but yeah.
Okay. Super great. Thank you so much. So I want to start our class, as I always do, with a prayer. And tonight, I want to offer honor to a Berkeley neighbor, Marcia Falk, who some of you know, and certainly you might know her work, her liturgy, beautiful liturgy that she writes. And I want to start with a prayer for study that I think is suited to the study of Mussar. Her prayer for study and revelation, for learning something that maybe is new to us. Nivarech et ein hachayim, makor havana v'havchana, niskena la'avin u'lazkil, lishmor lilmod u'lelamed, lishmor v'lasot v'lekayem divrei Torah ba'ahava. Let us bless the source of life, source of the fullness of our knowing. May we learn with humility and pleasure. May we teach what we know with love. And may we honor wisdom in all its embodiments. So why that prayer is so perfect for Mussar is that Mussar asks us to embody the virtues, to actually make them real in the world. We're meant to examine our lives as we do at the high holidays, many of us, but not just at the high holidays, but throughout the year, maybe daily, and think to ourselves how we can put into the real world all the big and small interactions and encounters we have during the day, how we can put our best self forward in those moments. And each of us sets our own curriculum. I have mine, you're going to have yours, and I want to emphasize something. You might learn from the people around you, especially the people that are closest to you. You might hear from them what they think you should work on. They may have some very specific things for you to add to your Mussar curriculum. Now, I would say take that advice in good humor and listen attentively, which is another Mussar Midah, and then set your own curriculum, because you have to be working on what you feel you can make progress on. So pick something that is going to be something you can think about every day for a period of time and see how much progress you can make on it. Now, I sent you a list. You got in your email, I hope everyone got a list in the middle of which, thank you, I see some people got it, in the middle of which are some of the midot. There are many, many. There are many different lists. People have different versions of these lists of midot. But I want you to look at it and just for a minute, think about, and maybe you did this already when you got it on your email, which is a habit or a personality trait or a soul trait, an ethical quality in you that you would like to change, like you would like to have more of it or less of it. Did any of you, just by, I don't know if I can see most of you. Did any of you see one jump out at you? If you did, just raise your hand. Something that you really identified with. I see Lynn raised her hand. Lynn, can you unmute, and do you feel comfortable saying which one you thought about?
Sure. I was looking at order. I'm in the middle of trying to clean up this house, and I could use a lot more of that, of order.
Okay, order. So order jumped out at you. Anyone else? Just raise your hand. You don't have to bare your soul. Just say something that jumped out at you. Emily, welcome. I'm glad you made it on. Amy, what do you want to work on? You have to unmute there.
Yeah, I did. Patience.
Yeah. Hey, just a show of hands, how many of you feel like you could use more patience? Okay.
I don't mean, and maybe it's patience as much with myself as it is with some of my closest, the people closest to me.
Absolutely. Often we're hardest on ourselves. Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna say that you'll be glad, Lynn, that next week we're gonna do a whole session on order. There are many different pieces of order, not just cleaning up our houses, but that's certainly one that's important. And we'll talk about it a little bit more next week. And part of the reason we're going to talk about it is that when I retired, I was so happy about being, free from a very, very busy and tightly packed schedule that I went the other way in my orderliness, and I stopped looking at my calendar enough. And what I discovered is that I stood people up, I was late, I double booked myself, I forgot things. Very bad way to go. And so now so what I'm trying to show you by that example is that each of these midot is on a continuum. And there's nothing good or bad about the midah. What we're trying to do is find the right place on the continuum for a given moment in our lives. And it might change in the middle of the day. There might be a moment when it's important for me just to be completely focused on one thing and put everything else out of my mind. That's a kind of order. But there are other times when I have to take these inputs all at once and somehow juggle those, because that's what life offers us. We do that when we're driving. We do it lots of times during the day when we're encountering different people in different moments. So what we're trying to figure out in Mussar is which midah do I need to increase the intensity at which times, and which might I have to decrease the intensity at which times. So one I want to encourage you to do is always to speak up when you feel you have something to say, including in this class. So some people say humility is being kind of retiring and allowing other people to fill up the space. But you can have too much humility, just like you can have not enough humility. One of my friends is a CEO of a big company, and when he started to study Mussar, he realized that in every meeting, he took up the most space. Now, he was the CEO, so it kind of made sense that he took up the most space, but he began to realize that no one else really was contributing very much to the meetings at all. He said to himself, God rested on the seventh day. I can be quiet for 7 minutes in the meeting. So he stopped talking for a period of 7 minutes in the meeting, and he found that other people began to contribute in ways that were really important to him. And then he came back to his Mussar teacher and he said, do you think I'm doing it right? I'm looking at the clock so much, I'm not sure I'm listening to the other people that are contributing to the parts of the meeting. And his teacher said, keep trying. So there are different ways to be humble, and there are different ways to move ourselves on that continuum in a way that we find is going to make us feel we are making progress in this. Now, where does the word Mussar come from at all? It actually is a Hebrew word that's found first in Proverbs. And Proverbs, of course, is the book in the Hebrew Bible that is an ethical guide. It gives you lots and lots and lots of advice. And the very first verses say that we're supposed to have understanding. Mussar is known as understanding and wisdom, but it also has the implication of correction, changing course when the course needs to be changed. And it has the implication of moral conduct, that menschiness. In modern Hebrew, it came to mean ethics, the word ethics, and the understanding of ethics. And where does Mussar come from? In the early 1800s, there was a Rabbi, Israel Salanter, in Lithuania, who had a very nice congregation. Of course, there were only Orthodox Jews in that time. And he noticed that his students and his congregation was full of people that cared really deeply about following the letter of the law. They would inspect their meat to make sure it was completely kosher. And if they had any doubt, they would come to him and he would have to look and check. And He would check their fabric to make sure the wool and the linen wasn't combined, and so on and so forth. But when they came into his study, they didn't say, "Oh, hi, Rabbi, how are you?" They didn't greet his wife. There was no derech eretz. There was no humanity in their behavior. And the same with their business dealings. They weren't kind to their colleagues, to their workers. And finally, he realized this is very wrong. That as careful as we are with our kashrut, with what we eat, what we put in our mouth, that's how careful we have to be with the way we treat other people. Now, I don't know if some of you noticed this, but when the pandemic first started and people were walking and walking around, because that's all we could do was walk around our neighborhoods, people greeted each other. It was so nice. It was like a whole new thing. Even once we started wearing masks, there was still like a greeting. And I thought, we have to always greet each other. The Talmud says that no matter who you encounter, you greet them with a smile, even if you're not feeling so great that day. It's a remarkable thing. In 2013, I read that, and I started when I'm walking or when I'm in a supermarket or anywhere, I just say hi and I smile. You know, some people are so startled that they've been greeted. And it changes the whole nanosecond of that encounter. So Israel Salanter said, we've got to learn how to do this. We've got to relearn it. We have to understand that human beings and human connections are very, very important. And he began to look back in Jewish texts, which of course spoke a great deal about ethics, about behavior, about these character traits that we're talking about. And he found that wisdom, and he began to build a practice of Mussar study that filled his yeshiva, and pretty soon his disciples went out and created other Mussar yeshivot. Now, I want to say at the very beginning here that in Salanter's world and in the Mussar world in general, the reason that we do this is not just to be nice people and to create a nice feeling on the street or in the market or wherever we are. The reason that we do these, that we try to be mentioned in the world is because we believe in Salanter's world, in the Jewish world, that we are God's servants, that our job is to bring holiness into the world. Just as God brought holiness into the world, so do we. And holy moments can be that nanosecond of a greeting. So Salanter talks a lot about God and living up to the expectations that God has of us. Now, I know there are people here in this class who don't have a belief in God or aren't sure about God or who feel uncomfortable talking about God. So we're not going to do that so much. But I want you to understand the underpinning and the foundation of Mussar. And the other thing I want to tell you is you can ask questions, because I'm talking a lot. So if you have a question, you can, let's see what you can do. You can show me in the chat. What's the easiest way? Because I can't see all of you.
You can do reactions at the bottom. You can put a thumbs up. You can clap. And you can also raise your hand.
Stop as well. If anybody has any questions, I'll just stop right here after talking about God and just a little intro to what Mussar is and where it came from, and just stop right this second for reactions. And also I'll look at your chats. Raised hand, Amy Schoenblum. You want to unmute and ask your question?
I was actually trying to show you how we can put up our hand with the
God bless.
reaction symbol. But I do have I might as well ask a question while I have.
Ask your question.
Sure. It's really fascinating to me, but knowing so little, I guess if you were to distill the essence, Mussar sounds like a way of being, but is is it a practice, like a daily practice, the way meditation, you know, these 20 minutes a day of sitting, or yoga, which is a, you know, 90-minute thing that you do with a video or at a class, you know, how would you distill?
If you look at that sheet that I sent you, you'll see that at the top, we're gonna do more of this next week because I'm gonna walk you through the practice. Now I'm just kind of opening your eyes to what Mussar is and where it came from. It is a practice, and some people are very dedicated and do it every day, just like some people are everyday meditators. I've combined mindfulness meditation and Mussar. They dovetail really beautifully. And in fact, what I was just about to tell you is that Salanter was so brilliant. Pre-Freud, he had an understanding that we have an unconscious that affects our actions, and that we have an outer conscience, what we live with in the world, and that sometimes that inner unconscious, of course, impacts how we act. So he recommended that we have quiet time, that we have meditation time, quiet time, just to listen to our own selves telling us what's inside there. The anger, the resentment, the hope, the fear, all of those things that we don't usually get quiet enough to know about. And then he said, if you do that and you have a sense of what's inside, when a volatile moment comes, and it doesn't have to be super volatile, it can be just a little moment of impatience. If we have an understanding of what goes on and what our motivations are, we might stop ourselves. We might have a moment where we actually think to ourselves, what would be the best way to act now? Should I say this thing I always say when my spouse annoys me? Or should I keep my mouth shut, which will make us both happier in the end? He called that moment the Bechira point. Bechira means choice. The choice point. I have a choice. I can be mean and nasty. I had a terrible experience just recently. I rented a car. It was an awful car rental place. It was an awful car. They were awful people in line. They didn't wear their masks. It was just a miserable experience. And I stood in that line and I thought, I can get up to that counter and give them a piece of my mind, and I can tell them how awful they are, and I can yell and scream. And these people were so miserable. It only would have made things worse. I think it would have been, you know, I don't know, a conflagration, because every single person was having a very bad day. So that's an extreme example, but we have those moments and we can feel completely justified. I was so justified in complaining in a mean way.
I have to go.
Thank you for joining. I know how much that Svea Vanessa meant and how much she continues to mean to you. Thank you for joining, okay?
Okay, I don't know. Let's see.
Somebody unmuted.
Okay, Svea.
I'm gonna unmute.
Sorry for your loss.
Let's see.
Okay, Svea, come on, I think that we're all set right here. So I'm just putting together the last few things that we translated here. And then we'll end one more time in that prayer that we wrote together.
Oh, this is some other
Right here, just so that we have it all.
boom coming in.
We have it all
And of
together.
course,
I'm gonna
Skylar's
add it to the
on.
chat box right here.
Do you have host privileges, Rabbi Shanks?
I do.
So you can mute all and then unmute yourself again.
Okay, I have to find out how to do that.
You go up to view, and it'll say up in the right-hand corner.
Yep, I have view.
Okay, then there should be your name as host, and you can go up into there and click on more, and you should be able to, or either that or participants, excuse me.
Participants, I think.
Participants, excuse me.
But
I haven't done
I
this
don't
in a
think
while.
those people are on our, I think they're on this.
It stopped.
Well,
Yeah.
they went away. Thank you, Emily.
You're welcome. Yes,
Bye.
participants.
Okay.
So
So
in the
if-
future,
yeah, it's participants. So going to the Bahira point, I think if I want to distill one thing in this first lesson, the thing I want to distill is that practicing Mussar helps us strengthen our Bahira point, our ability to stop ourselves from repeating old habits, things that get us into trouble, things that we would say afterward, if only I hadn't, or if only I had. Because sometimes, and this is what I also want to emphasize, sometimes it's righteous indignation needs to be expressed. There are a lot of reasons right now in the world to express our need for justice, our need for truth, our need for lots of things that are not happening. So leaving that space open for others who are going to fill it is also not necessarily the right thing. But Mussar helps us understand that moment when we have a choice and how we are going to respond to that choice. How many of you, again, just by show of hands, how many of you have had moments in recent days, I know you've had them throughout your life, like I have, where you actually said to yourself in recent days or weeks or months, if only I hadn't, or if only I had. You know, things where you wish you had acted differently. And if you had had that moment to think, if your conscious mind had taken the opportunity to stop the unconscious impulse, the ego impulse, how much better things would be, or how much better we would feel. If anyone has that kind of experience that they would want to describe, that would be helpful to others. I would encourage you to do that. Because it's real world. That's the other thing I want you to know about Mussar. It's everyday stuff. It's the car rental, it's everything. How we talk to our kids, our grandkids, our spouses, our friends. Anyone have one of those? You can put your hand up so I can see, because I don't see everyone. Jeanette.
Yeah, I went to my sister's for lunch for the first time in, I don't know, since August or something, because of the Delta surge. I stopped seeing people again after that for a while.
Yeah.
My sister and I are very close. Her husband and I, not so much. He's been on his best behavior with me for the last few years because we have very different ideas about how the world works and politics, etc.
Right.
And we were talking about something not related to politics, and he just started going off on a tangent that I could tell was going in a dangerous direction. And he's not somebody I usually stand up to. He's been in my life. He's been married to my sister for over 50 years. So I've known him for a very long time. And instead of just shrinking away, I said, we need to stop talking about this. And he said, you're right. There's nothing we're going to agree on. You're right. And then thankfully, he went in the house and left us sitting out on the deck by ourselves because he had been with us the entire visit. So I thought, okay, I could have reacted differently. And I think that was exactly the right way to handle it. So.
That's great. That's great. Anyone have the opposite? Like you did something you wish you hadn't? You wish you'd had that Bahira moment and you changed your mind? Did someone raise their hand? I can't see all of you, so. Emily,
My Rebecca, my youngest daughter, had her wedding that she'd been postponing for 2 years,
Mazel tov.
which was lovely. But there was lots of conflict about COVID vaccines and masks and all those kinds of things. And some members of my family wouldn't make up their mind. Wouldn't make up their mind about whether they were coming or not until the very last minute, which I felt was extremely rude and hurtful to my daughter. I didn't confront my brother. I let my sister do it for me. And because I knew that she can come down hard, and she would have made him come. He came, but he was very angry about it. So I chickened out instead of having the hard conversation myself.
Wow.
Yeah, so I did apologize to him afterward, but yeah, that's something that I have done most of my life, is that I can do confrontation when it comes to anybody else but my immediate family. I don't do it. So
let's look at, that's a really interesting one, because let's look at those midot. Pull out your sheet, and I'll also try and screen share. Again, this is my first screen share ever. Shehechianu for me. We'll see if I can do it.
So you have to have it on. There you go. You got it. Yeah.
Nope, different one. I'm going to get it though. Hooray. Okay. So we're looking at these sampling of midot, soul traits in the middle. And I just want you to think about Emily's story. And we're going to look at these different midot, and we'll see how they interact in the same situation. We might have many midot that we have to think about and we can learn from. So even patience, the very first one on this list, Emily was patient for a while until, push was coming to shove with the wedding. And how much patience could she have? What is this having patience? What is that saying about her need to take up the right amount of space, which would be humility? Should she have had more patience or less patience in this situation? Maybe less patience would have helped her relieve some of the tension for her daughter's wedding by calling her brother and just saying, we really need to know. I know you're conflicted. We're all conflicted. It's such a hard time. Everybody makes their own decisions, blah, blah, blah. But patience and humility are at work here. But I would say another one that's at work here is honor. The guests are able, in their response to the invitation, to show honor to the bride and groom. It's a mitzvah in Jewish tradition. We're supposed to do everything we can to rejoice with the bride and the groom. Not responding, even in a time of conflict and pandemic and so on, is really dishonoring of this couple and Emily and Dan giving the wedding. So that comes into play, and it also comes into play on Emily's side, giving honor to her brother and to the other guests by understanding their conflict, by asking them, by being curious. Maybe attentive listening comes in here too. Maybe what Emily, and I'm making this up because I don't know Emily's brother that at all, but maybe if Emily had asked what's going on with you and listened attentively, there might have been an opportunity for real dialogue between them in a situation that obviously is very uncomfortable for everybody. Everybody's very uncomfortable. Anyone else? Anything else? Yeah, Amy?
Am I unmuted? Can you hear?
I can hear.
Oh, okay. I was struck by looking at the sampling of midot that the word respect doesn't show up. Now, maybe in Alan, in the books that you've listed, and in further readings, that would be, that would show up. But in the sampling of Midot,
These are just samples. Respect could be on another list. These usually come from Jewish texts, so honor is more closer to, I think, what you're saying as we might understand as respect.
well, yeah, maybe.
Giving a person their due.
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of Emily's example, and you, and even in hearing your response, that her brother, in my opinion, call it maybe my judgment shouldn't be out there in this one, but there was some lack of respect on his part that needed to be addressed, and that I just see I guess I feel a lot about the lack of respect in our world, a lot.
Yeah, so that's something that's gonna be important for you to look at as you study Mussar, and maybe some of these different Midot will speak to that. Certainly kavod, certainly honor does, because when we give honor to other people, we give them the weight of their, actually at the end of today's session, we're going to talk a little bit about honor, and maybe that'll help you. I was about to say that I think on both sides there needed to be honor, you know, that good communication is based on both sides feeling that they need to honor the other person. Gloria, is that you with your hand raised?
Wait. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay. This Midot I don't remember seeing before, but I think it's so important. Rightful speech.
Yes.
And it's how you answer someone and the words that you use that are so important and could make such a difference in how things work out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Rightful speech, how we speak, what we say,
Right.
when is important to tell the truth, when is important to be quiet. You know, we're talking about weddings, you know, the rabbis say every bride is beautiful. You want to honor, you know, give honor through your speech always.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say also, you know, trying to distill Mussar into one session is challenging. The hero point is important. Just the sampling of Midot and the understanding that you are at any one time somewhere on the continuum. So I'll give an example, since Gloria brought up rightful speech. In Mussar text, there is a great deal of emphasis on how we speak and what we say and how we say it. In that, I just lost my chain of thought. I'm sorry. Rightful speech. Oh, the biggest topic in rightful speech is gossip. Talking about other people, and of course it's connected with judgment. And again, it's an ego need that Rabbi Salanter points out. It's an ego need when we judge others and we find them less than ourselves, it builds ourselves up. And it feels good to be able to say something about someone else that makes us seem in the moment that we are better, higher, or more honored than they are. And of course, Rabbi Salanter says, let's see, he had one great line about evil speech. He said, the main way to gain honor is by guarding your tongue. That is worth more than all Torah and good deeds. Now, a rabbi does not say lightly that is worth more than all Torah and good deeds. I mean, really, that's kind of hyperbolic, isn't it?
Judy Cohen is teaching this thing called the it's Buddhist text. It's
Huh.
Apana.
See, I think there's
Exact-
someone.
Exact same sayings.
Oh, is someone commenting from here? Could you, let's see if I can. Was that someone in our class commenting? Could you say it again? Or was that from another? Huh. So we have these missing.
I think there's a cross line.
I do too. Okay, well, thank you all for putting up with this. I want to say one other thing about Mussar. Again, these kind of bullet points about Mussar. When I first started teaching Mussar, an older congregant came to me and said, my spouse made me come to this class. But I'm a firm believer in the old adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I want to tell you a story that Rabbi Salanter told, that when he first decided to create this new understanding and this new study of Mussar. And he was walking home from shul late one night, probably after a long board meeting. And his next door neighbor was a shoemaker. Late at night, the shoemaker is still fixing shoes. And he knocks on the door. He says, why are you up so late? And the shoemaker says, as long as the candle burns, repair can be made. And from a week afterward, Rabbi Salanter was walking around saying, as long as the candle burns, repair can be made. And what he was trying to say is that no matter how old we are, we can change. We can change. We can be different people. We can be who we want to be, not who we don't like about ourselves. We can be what we like about ourselves and more and better, and we can do it better. And I'm just wondering if, I know there are people on this Zoom. I'm going to take away the screen for a minute so I can see everybody. I know there are people on this Zoom who've been studying Mussar for a while, and I'm just wondering if anyone can give a testimonial if you've been studying Mussar and a change that you feel like you've made. It can be incremental, and that's the other thing about Mussar, is that it's incremental change. It's little steps, but they're important steps. Anybody have a way they've changed that they feel comfortable sharing?
I do.
Who's I do?
Amy Schulman.
Amy, please. Go ahead.
You have several Amy's on this.
I do. Yes. Go ahead. Amy Schulman.
Well, a number of years ago, I went through a very, very difficult time in my life. And there were a lot of things that I was realizing about my life. And anyway, and I actually like to refer to that time of my life as my enlightenment. It really like broke down a lot of my thoughts about mainly about myself. And I realized that I needed to make some changes. And this is actually even before I heard of Mussar. And a few months after things got better for me, things kind of fell into place. And a few months later, my daughter sends me this book, the Everyday Holiness. And I remember reading this, and it's like, oh my God, I just went through this. Like, I wish I had known that there was something like it. And I actually have been fortunate enough to take a series of classes in Mussar. And I mean, I just think it's wonderful. When I saw this opportunity, it's like, yes, I need to get back to that. So
was there one midah that you worked on that you felt you made change?
I think, yes, it was on maybe humility. Because I think I realized that, I'd always thought that I was this really good person, and I realized that there were parts of me that were not very good at all.
Great,
So,
thank you for for the testimonial. I appreciate it. And
You're
Hugh,
welcome.
Hugh, do you want to?
Oh, yeah, thanks. I would say for me, it's a broad range of greater self-awareness, whether I'm stopped at the red light and furious about that or many other things. So I don't know that I would say it specifically as much as the deeper self-awareness. And I put in earlier in the chat that Mussar has been a very fast route to open up self-awareness and spirituality. So I just make that general statement.
Yeah, thank you. I would agree. I'll give my own testimonial. It was, is, and continues to be life-changing for me. And I'm not trying to convert anyone. I'm just saying how powerful a practice it is. Did someone else have a comment that they wanted to make? So what I'd like to do is not only say that no matter how old we are, we can change. I also want to say there's some urgency that, you know, we don't know how long we have. And if anything, if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's to have some, you know, urgency about what we want to be and how we want to change and how we can change and what's important to us and what our priorities are. So I'm gonna just share this, I hope. Those of you who've studied with me before know that I love to learn from poetry. So this is a poem that I think is a Mussar poem. I'm gonna read to you, but you can also see it, called Notice. This evening, the sturdy Levi's I wore every day for over a year, and which seemed to the end in perfect condition, suddenly tore. How or why, I don't know, but there it was, a big rip at the crotch. A month ago, my friend Nick walked off a racquetball court, showered, got into his street clothes, and halfway home collapsed and died. Take heed, you who read this. Take heed, you who read this, and drop to your knees now and again like the poet Christopher Smart, and kiss the earth and be joyful and make much of your time. And be kindly to everyone, even to those who do not deserve it. For although you may not believe it will happen, you too will one day be gone. I, whose Levi's ripped at the crotch for no reason, assure you that such is the case. Pass it on. It's a Mussar poem not only because it speaks of the urgency and that the candle burns and that it's gonna, you know, go out, but also because Steve Cowett, the poet, is saying, everyone deserves honor, as Amy said before, respect, a sense of the weightiness of humanity's life in this world. And we who are privileged, of course, still have troubles. We still have heavy weights. We still have burdens. We still have worries, and we still have fears. And we have a capacity to relieve some of those for other people and for ourselves. So for next week, what I'd like you to do during this week, because Mussar is a practice and you have your sheet that has some suggestions on it, and we're going to go through those in detail next time with one midah, so it'll be easier to see how this all works. I'd like you to think about honor, kavod. In Pirkei Avot, the wonderful ethical statements in the Mishnah, Rabbi Ben Zoma says, Ezehu michubad, who is honored? And then he answers his own question, the one who honors others. How do we accrue honor to ourselves? By honoring others, by seeing them as we understand in Judaism. We're all created in God's image. We all contain a spark of holiness. each of us the same as others. And so each is worthy of that kavod. We all have a soul, we all carry burdens, we all have talents and disabilities not of our making. None of us chose our particular talents or deficits. So I invite you to start in your practice to think about honor, honoring yourself, honoring your unconscious motivations in life, your habits, those you love, those you'd like to change. And think about others and honor them and pay them their due. Now, what happens with honor, the opposite of honor might be judgment. So when you find yourself this week judging others, and you'll feel it in your head once you start the practice, this week I'm doing honor. This week honor is in the front of my mind. And then you're walking down the street and you see someone who's talking really loudly and you think, why do they have to talk so loudly? Or maybe they're playing music really loudly out of their car and you think, why are they playing music so loudly? Then you could say, well, maybe their hearing is bad. Or you could say, maybe they live in their car and that's their place. That's all they've got is this beautiful music and their car is their home. I don't know what you're gonna say in your head. But how can you give honor to others and how can you honor yourself? Now, one of the ways that Mussar says to do this is to have like a mantra, just like in meditation, you have a mantra that you meditate on and it kind of gets into your unconscious. So people make up their own mantras. I'm going to give you a few suggestions for kavod, for honor. One is see the good in everyone. So if you start judging someone, stop yourself and say, like, Emily, I don't mean to pick on you, but if you're judging your brother, then you can think, well, yeah, but he's really loyal. Yeah, I'm making this up. He's really loyal. He's got a great sense of humor. He was good to me when we were little. He picked me up that time on the playground when I broke my arm. You know, whatever it is, reset the tape when you find yourself judging. So see the good in everyone might be your mantra. Another one might be, the one I use a lot is, B'Tselem Elohim. B'Tselem Elohim means created in God's image. Whatever that means, however you understand that, as a believer and not a believer, that each person has some holiness. Now, when I was in the congregation and I had a really hard meeting coming up. This was someone that was mad at me or mad at a temple policy or something I knew was going to be a really hard meeting. I would take a couple minutes before that person knocked on the door and I would just sit and I would say, B'Tselem Elohim, this person is created in God's image. And when they were yelling at me in my head, I was saying, B'Tselem Elohim, B'Tselem Elohim. And it really helped me listen to who they are, pay attention to what fears they were describing, what anger, what was behind all of that. So that might be one that works for you, B'Tselem Elohim, it's one that works for me. Another one is look beyond the outer layer. Look beyond the outer layer. Sometimes all we see is someone's outer layer. What's inside? What's inside that person? What's just beyond that outer layer? If what you're struggling with is having honor for yourself, then your mantra you might want to have is, I am enough. I am enough. It's very honoring to have that sense. I'm enough. And finally, one that a student once told me she liked was, I have nothing to prove. I have nothing to prove. So, yeah, I think that's it. That's enough. So, but you might have one of your own, and please come back next week and tell us what one you came up with. And finally, the last thing I want to tell you about Mussar that has helped me incredibly through the years is to be curious. Now, curiosity is not necessarily a midah, but I think it's the most important one because it's non-judgmental. It opens our eyes to things we wouldn't see otherwise about ourselves and other people. So if you're confused about all this, then I would say spend the week being curious. Being curious about what it's like to sit for 5 minutes in silence. What it's like to just honor yourself for who you are. What it's like to honor others for who they are, just as they are, not as you want them to be. Be curious. Spend the week being curious. And in our last minute, does anyone have any questions, any thoughts, any comments that you want to make? I'll read the chats. I didn't have a chance during the teaching, but I will do that. Questions, comments, worries, fears? All good?
I did not get the handout, so if it can be sent to me, I'd
I
appreciate
will send it to you.
Yeah.
I will do that. Others? Howard, do you have a question?
Yes, I would love to get the handouts. I didn't get it.
Okay. Okay. Could both of you put your emails in the chat? Or you know what, better, send me your emails to rabbishanks@gmail. And I'll send you anyone else that didn't get the handout? Okay, wish you all a great week. I will see you next Thursday and look forward to studying and learning with you. Bye-bye.
Rabbi Shanks, are you still
Yeah.
there?
I am. I'm reading the chat. I don't know how to save
Okay.
it.
I just wanted to ask you
Yes.
if next week the session will be recorded, because I'm going to be on a silent retreat starting
lucky
Sunday.
Uh-huh.
And I won't be able to attend next Thursday.
It is recorded.
And how will I get
I will find out.
Okay.
I'm, as I said, I'm not very technological. I don't see who's speaking. Who is it?
Mirka.
Okay, Mirka. I will find out and I will let you know how you get a copy, but it was recorded from the beginning. I believe how it works is that my teaching is recorded, not students' comments.
That's fine. I just want that part for next week, because I'll be gone from Sunday to Monday.
Yes, enjoy. Lucky
Thank you.
Lucky you. Yeah.
And in fact, I wanted to, I didn't get to say this before, but without mindfulness meditation, without Vipassana, I don't know that I would ever see that tiny space where you can make the choice.
Yeah.
That's what it was that practice that alerted me to it.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, you can learn it from the Mussar end of things, and you can learn it from the mindfulness, but they do dovetail really nicely. And it is very helpful to me when I meditate regularly.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
See you in 2 weeks.
Okay, enjoy the retreat.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Barbara, you wrote something at Midat. I don't know what you mean.
I was a little bit confused about sort of soul traits versus kind of psychological traits. Like when you said the thing at the beginning about, you know, what's something you would like to work on. And I thought, oh, I really don't like that. I have a lot of indecisive,ness or I'm ambivalent, but I don't know if that's like in that category.
Yeah, you can almost find anything in these midot because it's very broad and they are psychological and they are action oriented and they are kind of ego driven and not so indecisiveness, I would say, let me look at the list. Like the one that says setting boundaries. In Hebrew, it's gevurah, which means strength. And it's having the wherewithal to say, well, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to set this boundary, meaning I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to say, this is what's right for me. And it is, and there's another one that's not on this list called Ometz Lev, which means kind of courage, I would say. And so I think courage is another one. And again, courage can go off the deep end and you can be very impulsive. So you want to be courageously justified in how you make your decisions. That's what I mean about the continuum. So you want to have the courage to jump in and do what you have to do, but you don't want to be impulsive and foolish either. You don't want to, sign a mortgage that has payments you can't make because you're so strong and decisive. So you got to find the right amount. Midah, I didn't mention it. Midah means measure. You want to find the right measure, right measurement. I'll mention that next time, measure. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to sign off. Thanks for being here. I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. Thanks.
Great. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.